Ciao, buongiorno or buonasera. In this video I'm gonna give you the rundown on getting around Palermo and public transportation. Specifically, I'll talk about airport connections, so how to get from the airport to the city center and back, of course, how to get around the city, and how to get to these little towns and islands that surround Palermo. And stay here with me till the end of this video. There is no time for Instagram. You can do the dishes later, because I'll wrap up by telling you a couple of must-know things that often confuse tourists. By the way, if you don't know me, my name is Nico, 100% Siciliano, Palermo resident and founder of wearepalermo.com, the most authentic guide to Palermo made by Sicilians with love. One little side note, the most popular question that I get is, Nico, how is public transportation in Palermo? Is it good? Is it bad? It depends on your background, because if you are used to the efficiency of cities like London or New York or Paris, where public transportation is punctual like a Swiss watch and it reaches even your living room, of course, Palermo's public transportation might seem like a bit of a bummer. Instead, if you come from highest mountains, no offense, and you see the metro only on TV, of course, Palermo's public transportation might seem like a dream come true. Beauty or ugliness, good or bad, bello or brutto, as we say in Italian, do not exist objectively. It's all about comparison. One more important thing, all the apps, transportation options, websites, and so on and so forth that I'll mention in this video are in the description. So first, watch the video till the end, remember, and then check out the description for the details. Allora, let's start with airport connections. You got 5 different options. First, I'll go over the first 2 that are most reliable, popular, and budget friendly. Then I'll tell you about the other 3 options that are less popular but could make sense for you. The first option is the shuttle bus from a local company called Prestia and Comandè. It takes you from the airport to the city center and back in about 40-45 minutes or so. There is a bus every 30 minutes and it makes different stops along the way, but it won't take you to the seaside like Mondello, Sferracavallo or Capaci. The bus is always on time, it's reliable, it's as solid as a rock, and it doesn't ever cause us any problem, so you can count on it without a worry. You can catch the shuttle bus by following the signs in the arrivals area, and you can purchase your ticket either online in advance or at the airport. On the way to the airport, you can buy the tickets also at each bus stop. You will find someone there selling the tickets. The second option is the shared taxi. There is a regular van taxi that lets people share the ride. Don't worry, you don't have to ask strangers to share the ride to fill up the taxi. The driver will take care of that. It follows the same route as the shuttle bus, but it's faster and it costs only a couple of euros more. Of course, being a shared taxi, you can ask the driver, drop me off at Mario's restaurant. It doesn't work that way. For that, you need to get a regular cab. To catch the shared taxi, simply follow the signs in the arrivals area. You can pay the driver directly. You don't have to buy tickets or book it in advance. The shared taxi is reliable, but the only downside is that sometimes you might run into some crazy drivers who drives like he just escaped from the nut house. In this case, don't worry, just say, amico mio, slow down, slow down. Alright, these were the 2 most popular options, but as I said in the beginning, there are 3 more options that are less popular, but they might be a good fit for you. So one more option is a train from the national company Trenitalia. It runs between the central station and the airport once an hour. It takes about 60 minutes to take you to the airport or to the central station. The train makes stops at different towns along the way, including those on the coast like Sferracavallo, Capaci, Isola delle Femmine, and that's the only advantage of choosing the train over the shuttle bus or the shared taxi, as it's slower than both. Just note that the train, unfortunately, won't take you to the seaside of Mondello or Addaura. The train is reliable, but it's not super fast, so I would use it only if I had to go to these little towns that are not covered by the shuttle bus or the shared taxi. Another option is Uber. It's been around since 2022 after a years-long drama with local governments. It ain't exactly cheap, but if you have some extra cash to burn, it's hands down the most convenient way to get around. And your last option, drum roll, is the regular taxi service that is waiting for you outside the arrivals area. If you know me, you know that I'm not a fan of these people. I'm sorry, I don't want to generalize here, but let's say that many of them tend to overcharge. Now, before the typical champion of hopeless causes chimes in with, Nico, I took taxis in Palermo and they were all super nice. I know, you can find nice people anywhere, even in hell. Again, I don't want to generalize here, but it's a fact that many of them tend to rip people off. And even though there are set prices from the airport to the city center, they still have their tricks. The bad news is that after 1 AM, there is no other way to get to the city center from the airport except for taking a taxi or Uber. Now let's talk about the best ways to get around the city. Now, as long as you're staying in the central areas and you need to move only between key areas, public transport works just fine. The issue with public transport comes up only when you want to venture outside of the city or want to explore the whole island of Sicily. But in the city, as I said, you got no problems with public transport. You got two options to get around the city: the buses and these electric bikes or stand-up scooters that you can rent through apps on your phone. Let's start with the buses. The buses are from a local company called AMAT, A-M-A-T, and they come in white, yellow and blue colors. Now, if there were a competition for the most efficient bus service in Europe, Palermo bus service wouldn't even place, but as I said, in the city center it works decently well. You can purchase the tickets at tobacco shops, newsstands and AMAT kiosks. There is also an app, but to these days it's embarrassingly full of bugs and problems. It drives me crazy, it's so frustrating. To know which bus number to take and where to catch it, you can use Google Maps, but there is an app that works even better. You can find it in the description. Another important thing to remember is that in the historic center there are free buses that circulate. There are always from AMAT company, the city's bus company that I mentioned, but you can spot the free ones easily because they have a display that says free. The frequency is supposed to be 11 minutes, which isn't that bad for a free service. The link to the bus stops is in the description. Your second option for getting around the city is these electric bikes and stand-up scooters. Now, if you don't know these scooters, basically you hop on one of them like it's a skateboard and you hit the button to activate the electric mode. To use them, you need to download the app from the company you want to use, like Bird or Lime, and you are good to go. Of course, if you can't maintain balance and you can't ride the bicycle, of course, don't use them because you don't want to end up under a bus, right? You can take whichever you find on the street, go anywhere you like. When you arrive at your destination, simply park it and that's it. Easy peasy. They are not super cheap, so I would recommend getting a weekly subscription where you basically get a set number of minutes for a one-time fee. This way you can save some money. Technically, there should be rules for driving them, but locals don't care about. They do whatever they feel like, from two people on one single scooter to zooming on sidewalk. The police, yeah, they come to the historic center for some ice cream, coffee and from some good old police gossip, but that's a story for another time. Of course, for those who can afford it, there is also the Uber and taxi option, but as I said in the beginning, they are expensive and taxi drivers, yeah, you know the story. So to wrap this up, you can get around pretty well with buses, electric bikes and stand-up scooters. Just keep in mind that the farther you go from the city center, the more hit and miss public transport gets. Now let's talk about getting outside the city. If you have done your homework, you know that you gotta head outside the city to check out some of the stunning beaches we have, these picturesque little towns and these amazing little islands around Palermo. When it comes to getting outside the city, it might not be as easy as getting around the city. It's where the public transportation starts to get a bit shaky. Let's start with the beaches. If you want to get to the closest beaches to the city like Mondello or Adaura, you can get by with public transportation. The city bus is not exactly a Swiss watch, but you should eventually make to the beach without sweating like a pirate. Instead, if you want to get out of the city to visit some of the most popular beaches that we have like Cefalù, Scopello or San Vito Lo Capo, you can either take a train or a coach if available. If not, you need to rent a car. Now, based on my experience, besides Cefalù, which has a good train connection, and a handful of other places, I wouldn't dare venture outside the the city with public transportation, for the simple fact that they often have bad schedules, they are delayed, you need to take 300 connections, they cancel the trip. Especially, you know, with these small local bus companies, just know that they run the company like it's their neighborhood corner store. It's a Saturday, but we close early today. Yeah, sure, let's cancel the afternoon rides, forget about tourists. The same thing goes for the small towns around Palermo. Keep in mind that the smaller and more remote the place you want to reach, the more you need a car, because they are poorly connected or not connected at all. To sum it up, if you are planning to stay only a couple of days, you want to visit only the closest beaches like Mondello or Adaura, you want to visit maybe 1 or 2 nearby towns like Cefalù or Monreale, you can make it work with public transportation. Instead, if you're planning to stick around for a bit more and want to visit different beaches and towns around Palermo, I recommend renting a car unless you're down for a real headache dealing with public transport. And finally, the last places that you gotta visit are these little islands around Palermo like Ustica or Favignana. If you come here during the summer, you gotta visit these places because they are amazing. They are like paradise on earth with crystal clear waters. You get to these places by ferry or fast ferry that depart from the ports of Palermo, Marsala or Trapani. So depending on the island you are headed to, you have to go to a different port. Just keep in mind that Palermo is well connected to both Trapani and Marsala. With Trapani you have frequent buses that take you straight to the port. With Marsala you have both trains and buses that drop you off close by. Allora, per concludere, to wrap up this chat, let me tell you a couple of things to keep in mind about Palermo transportation, because I see a lot of tourists scratching their heads. First off, you might have heard of a metro in Palermo, but it's not a real metro, it's just a slow regional train that goes through some parts of the city, including some little towns around the city. It's not a top option for tourists, that's why I didn't mention it earlier, but who knows, maybe in some cases it might work for you. They have been talking about building a real metro for years, but with all the political drama, who knows what's really happening. All we know is that they started digging up half of the city and then for some reason they stopped. Second thing to know is that there is a tram in Palermo, but it goes around key areas and not within them. That's why I didn't mention it earlier. It's not a real option for tourists, maybe for the locals who hang out on the outskirts. One more thing, where to rent a car. Now, a lot of you have been asking me for suggestions on where to rent a car that is both trustworthy and affordable. Now, just know that it's not an easy feat. All the cheaper options out there have hidden fees and it's easy to pay for silly things like a scratch you didn't even know it was there. I recommend using websites like rentalscar.com that compare rental fees and go for well-known international companies with good reviews. You can save some money picking off, dropping off at the airport. And by the way, if you want to save some money, there is another option for renting cars. It's an app called Owning. It's a sort of Airbnb for cars where regular people like me can rent out their own vehicles at a cheaper rate compared to a traditional car rental. I've heard a lot of people using it, but I don't know the specific of insurance and what happens in case of an accident. If you're interested, check out the link in the description. Just make sure you read the fine print before using the service to be fully informed. As for driving, yes, it's pretty wild here, but you will get used to the lack of rules soon. And it's not as bad as it seems, but you'll definitely need some driving experience. That's it, abbiamo finito, grazie mille, ciao!